he definitely was my mentor. He would have to go to the bank, and he would let me ride with him. When I got driver's license, I would drive him, and he would talk to me about business and about his life and about a number of things, so that when I opened my own business, I was able to incorporate it by myself. I didn't need a lawyer because I had talked to him enough, and he was a lawyer. And I'd worked for Earl Dickerson, who was a lawyer.
Oh, yes.
And so I was well prepared for business.
Mr. Pace was very fair-skinned, too, wasn't
Oh,
he?
yeah. As a matter of fact,
I've seen pictures of him.
He was very fair-skinned, but he identified completely with blacks until he had a daughter and a son who went to the University of Wisconsin, and they fell in love with white boys and girls, and they wanted to get married, and the time came for them to meet the parents. So naturally, they didn't want to meet a black person. So Mr. Pace was also a lawyer. So he opened a law office downtown, and moved out of the black community to River Forest, which was a white community. So when Christmas came and it was time for the parents to meet him, he and his wife were living in River Forest. He had a law office downtown, and he didn't take any black newspapers or magazines home with him, which was a godsend for me, because he gave me the job of reading black newspapers and giving him a digest of what was happening in the black community each week. And I did that so he could talk intelligently to the people who were coming in and out of his office. And that's how I got the idea for Negro Digest. So he was more than a mentor. So he allowed me to subscribe to newspapers and magazines, and I subscribed to more than I should have subscribed to. But I became very knowledgeable about what was going on, and in various social gatherings, I would ask people if they read this or that or the other, and they say, no, how can I get it? So I thought, gee, I knew about Reader's Digest, so I said, why not a Negro Digest? The problem was that nobody thought it was a good idea except me. And my wife sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
Anyway, so I tried to, Mr. Pace told me, he was very helpful to me. He said, well, I think it's a good idea. He said, I said, well, I was thinking about trying to get some names and sending out letters to people, telling them I was going to bring out a magazine at a certain time and asking them to send in advanced subscriptions. And I talked about having an editorial board that I hoped he would join, and I was thinking about Mrs. Bethune and Walter White. He said, no, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I wouldn't have anybody on my editorial board. He said, all of us have lived a long time. We've made a lot of enemies. And if you put our names on the magazine, it wouldn't sell anyway. So why don't you just put out a good magazine without having the baggage of the enemies that the editorial board had made? So I took his advice. So
that is great advice.
I had no editorial board. And I was trying to borrow the money, and I went to the First National Bank then, and the guy said, boy, and he said, boy, many years later when I was a big deposit in the bank, nobody remembered who called me boy. But I remembered, but they were treating me so well that I never identified who it was. So the guy said, we don't do it. I said, well, is there anybody in this city that would loan money to a colored boy, $500? He said, yeah, there's a place. Only one place, he said. It's the Citizens Loan Corporation at 63rd and Cottage Grove. They'll do it. I said, well, do you know anyone out there? He said, of course. He's feeling very badly now about the way he's treated me. I said, may I say you sent me? He said, yeah, you can say I sent you. So I went out there, and the guy said, yeah, we can do it if you have collateral. I said, what is collateral? I didn't even know what, I didn't take business in college. I didn't know what collateral was. He said, collateral is some furniture you paid for, automobile you paid for. And I said, well, let me think about it and I'll come back. So my mother had just washed and scrubbed and saved and bought some new furniture. So when I asked my mother about mortgaging her furniture, for the first time, she blinked and said, "Son, I don't know anything about any black magazines, and I work hard for this furniture, and I don't want to give it up." She said, "I'll have to consult the Lord about this." So I called her the next day or two, and she said, "I prayed to the Lord, but he hasn't answered yet." So I said, "Well, maybe I ought to come out and pray with you." So I went
Move
to the
this
house,
along.
and we prayed together, and we cried together. And so finally, after another day or two, she said, "The Lord hasn't answered it, but I've gone this far with you. I'll go all the way. I'll mortgage the furniture." So with the mortgage of the furniture, I was able to get the $500, and I used that money to buy postage to send out letters to 20,000 people whose names I got from the insurance company. And
With their permission, of course.
with Mr. Pace's permission.
Yes.
Not that, but Mr. Pace's permission.
Yes.
He was the president was the president in those days.
Yes, yes.
He
So
was
only
president,
one person
he was
had to.
president of all the deaths, all the policies, everything. He was president.
Yes.
So if he said it was okay, it was okay.
Yes.
So I was already among my many dudes that running the speedometer machines.
Yes.
And so I could run my own things once he told me okay.
So you had access to the
I had
list
access to it, and
of people. Mm.
he even said I could use his stationery. And so the question was then, what can I say to these people that I'm writing to that will make them, I was only trying to get $3, that will make them send $3 to an unknown person in a field that has a graveyard of failures, because every other magazine prior to that had failed. And so I thought, well, the one thing that black people wanted at that time, in addition to a job, was respect.
Yes.
They wanted people to call them Mr. and Mrs. They wanted respect. So I decided in this letter, I said, "A good friend of yours told me about you. They said you were well respected in your community and that you would be interested in a magazine I'm about to bring out called Negro Digest. Because of this recommendation, we are willing to give you a charter subscription for $3 for a year, providing you send it in by a certain day, which was 30 days from there." And we got 3,000 answers, and they all sent me, it was really $2.
$2.
They sent me $2 each. And with that $6,000, I was able to get started. And most of the people say, "Oh, by the way, who told you about me?" Well, nobody told me about it.
Got it from the speedometer.
Nobody told me about that. So anyway, that's how I got started.
Your future was set.
The future was set.
The Negro Digest.
Negro Digest. Mhm.
And where did you set up your office for the Negro Digest?
Well, number one, I didn't have any money for an office. Mr. Dickerson, who was the general counsel, had a law office up there that he never used. He would just come by and say hello to everybody. He had his office downtown. So he said I could use his office. So I used his office, and my wife came to work then, and she would be up there with the telephone, and if anything important came up, she'd come downstairs and get me. So I
this was in the Supreme Life Insurance
Supreme Life
building.
Insurance Company
Yes.
building, yes. And the magazine was an immediate success.